Hi, and thank you for joining me for another video. And friends, this week's Parsha is Parashat Emor. Now we see in the first parak of the Parsha that it begins by stating that a priest must not make himself tameh for any death that occurs unless that individual is closely related to him. In other words, only if it's his father, his mother, his son, daughter, or sister, and that's it. And then it says it again, that for no one else is he to defile himself. And it's a bit interesting that one of the major arguments Christians constantly make for the need of a New Testament or a New Covenant is the notion that law and order was the signature of the God of the Old Testament, but love and grace entered the world through their Messiah. Or really, friends, if that's the case, how do they interpret this pasuk and countless others, hundreds of them, that depict the same? Now, what I'm saying is that here we have a holy priestly standard of purity that priests have vowed to hold by. Heck, we even see that in Parashat Shmini, God did not hold back striking Nadav and Avihu down because they failed to live up to that standard. But we see here, amidst all the order and regulations, a glimpse of the Almighty's greatest attribute. And my friends, that is love and the ability to sympathize with His creation, teaching us that amidst all the standards that He has not lost touch with the fact that we're only human, which is exactly what we see He did with Aaron in Parashat Shmini after he began failing in his ceremonial duties and his brother calls him on it. He stops and he looks at his brother Moshe and he says, after all I've gone through, after all I've lost, I'm just human. And you know what? Moshe stopped and he said no more because he knew that God understood. And even though we know this about our God, we know also that true love cannot exist without standards. This is why the Creator limits their defilement only to close family, because you know what? Their death is what hurts the most. Because the Almighty's war is not against standards like non-Jews believe nowadays, but rather against disbelief and its results. Disobedience. And friends, really, that attitude is not shared by the majority of the religious in the world today. When standards is put second to intentions, or when secularists horror at golden-laden temples and complain, why wasn't this money given to the poor instead? And you know what? After they melt down the gold and distribute the wealth, you still have the poor with you, but now they have no beautiful place to worship. So friends, when the standard is regarding holiness, your financial situation does not free you from your obligation, to the point that in the same parak, in the same chapter, it brings down how a person who serves the Almighty should carry himself. It states that he should have his hair cut properly. He should wear clean and untorn clothes, which is why it's always baffled me when anyone who's familiar with what the Almighty demands from us could ever possibly encourage people to do less. We know that God demands the best, not for His sake, but for ours. Is it that we don't sympathize enough with the rest of the world to let Him know? Which is no wonder Islam, my friends, is exploding at the seams, because people want structure. They want a path to holiness. Which is why, my friends, Hashem states in the second parak of the Parsha that one should only reserve the best for God, when it states that God is not interested in your defective animals for offerings. And honestly, it's not because the Almighty needs your resources and would prefer $2 instead of $1, but rather because in life we only get out of something what we put in. And if left to our own discretion, we would only do less and less till from the place we have trickled down to, we say, why bother? Again, teaching us that in any area of life that we want to progress in, whether it's our careers or even our marriages, the key is attention to detail and sacrifice, which is something kind of hard to do alone, which is why it mentions here that even who you hang around with or what crew you row with might even help. As the Almighty states Himself here in this parak, that among the Israelites I must be acknowledged holy, and then I will make them holy. In other words, in how we set Him apart, He will set us apart. And as we reserve the best for Him, so He will reserve the best for us and our families. All of this because of that commitment we've made and the Israelites made to walk in the ways of God. And in the same thought, friends, the Almighty continues in the next parak, describing the yearly Jewish calendar cycle. Friends, landmarks that are only here to help us live a more perceptive existence. He starts with Shabbat, signifying creation, which has always been a commandment instructing us to work just as much as to rest or to cease. In other words, the keys to a productive environment. Then Pesach, signifying our liberation from bondage and our new ability to freely fail or succeed. Then Shavuot, on how we should be grateful and sanctify what the Almighty has allowed us to produce by sharing it with those less fortunate. And then Yom Kippur, friends, reminding us that as long as we're on for the ride, He won't let us fail. And Sukkot, that all this means nothing if we forget what we've gone through. If we forget how far we've come, as it states that we should dwell in booths, so that for the generations to come, you and your descendants should know that when the Almighty took you out of Egypt, He did not let you fend for yourselves, but rather had you living in Sukkot, in booths in the desert, which signifies God's protection from above in our darkest hours. And friends, I believe that this cycle is not arranged like this by coincidence, but perhaps something that we as humans could really relate to. Creation, that just as the world was created for me, Pesach, God did not abandon me but liberated me, Shavuot. So now it's my turn, out of my gratitude, for me to begin to trust enough to give others what the Almighty gave me. Yom Kippur, with faith I know that He won't let me fail. And how do I know this? Sukkot, because He was there in the past. And friends, this is an idea that follows into the next parak, the notion of measure for measure, which actually goes the other way around also, that just as the Almighty did for us, we should do for others. And because we know how it feels to be wronged in any way, we should not stand by and fail to judge when someone else is wronged. And although all this may seem elementary to us because of the prolonged exposure of a world living by the standards in this book, it surely wasn't back then. And friends, if you're hearing my words today and you want to live a more perceptive, a more conscious existence, I want to welcome you to consider Torah Judaism and become a Jew yourself through conversion. For more information on converting to Judaism, please visit Torah Judaism International at the website torahjudaism.org. And for more information on everything Jewish, please visit bejewish.org. Thank you.